Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And we have kind of an exciting show to talk about, Doug, and something we haven't really talked about for a number of years now. And it's about time to do it. And of course, it's very interesting. It's your daughter, and it's the daughter in Grand Canyon. What do you want to call the show, Doug?
Well, I want to talk about what's at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Because when you and I were there, we didn't get down to the bottom. But Linda has a little, my daughter Linda has a little malady, and it's called FOMO. And that's fear of missing out. Oh,
okay.
And and she's really addicted to adventure and doing things, and skiing and scuba diving and kayaking and kiteboarding and
skydiving.
Yeah, and so she's all about having a lot of good times. And one of her goals was to hike to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and she did this in January.
I know.
Which was kind of amazing to me. And of course, Arizona is a little bit warmer than here, but it's still something
much.
Where you have a bit of snow, especially at 8,000 feet. Which
Arizona's warmer. Go down to Phoenix, Doug, but go up there, Grand Canyon, you get snow on the rim. It's chill. I don't know. And the bottom.
Yeah,
Speaking as one who has actually hiked to the bottom.
Yeah.
When I was young and immortal and stupid. And it's cold down there by the Colorado River.
It is, yeah.
Very cold.
And so they managed to take the South Kaibab Trail down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Now, you and I hiked that. And actually, my dad came with me that one time, and we hiked as far as Ooh-Ah Point. My dad and I, and we stuck right there. And
was that about a third of the way down?
About a third of the way down.
Something like that, yeah.
And it's really a beautiful view from there. But she also had some pictures of Ooh-Ah Point, and but she actually took the trail all the way down to the bottom. And then there was a place where they camped. And they had to make preparations for this hike because, in that weather and in the, and the distance involved in this hike is a pretty good trek to go get down there. You have to make sure you have the proper food, plenty of water, and electrolytes. And all of these sort of played a little role in what happened to them when they were taking this hike. They took the Bright Angel Trail out of the canyon, and on the way up, she got a little bit of hypothermia because there was kind of a difference between when you're walking in the shadow and when you're walking in the sun. So they had actually changed into shorts when it was starting to get hot for them, as they were hiking up the canyon. They were starting to get sweaty, and they found out that when they were hiking in the shadows, that's when she started to get cold. She actually got a little delirious, and so they had to stop for a little bit, and she snapped out of it. But the other young lady that was with her, was having trouble because she was sweating a whole lot more than Linda was, and she was losing electrolytes, and she actually used up her whole package of electrolytes on the way down. And so when they were coming back up, they were out, and she actually had to make a little trip to the hospital to get some IVs in her after the trip.
Well, Doug, that makes me stop to think a lot. When I went down, I did everything wrong. I had the wrong boots, didn't take any water with me, got all the way down to the bottom, froze my butt off down at the bottom of the Colorado River because there was no place to stay. So we were trying there. So then we got immediately up, hadn't eaten in 2 days, didn't sleep for about 2.5 days, and I didn't have any sleep obviously that night either. So it was about a day and a half. Hadn't slept. And I almost got to the top. I got about maybe 100 yards to the top. I could see the rim. Next thing I know, I'm being nursed to health by a nun and her niece in some cabin, because I think I vaguely remember being passed hand over hand because there was a big trail. Did she run into all the people lining up along the trail? Because when I was there, there was just people from all the way on the trail. You weren't more than 2 or 3 feet away from another person in front of you or behind you. So I think about that with Linda and her friend going through that stuff, and they were prepared, and I wasn't prepared at all. And so I'm going, wow, how did I do everything wrong and still make it? That was kind of amazing.
Well, they encountered some pack mules going up and down the trails as well. Did you when you go down there?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, going down, we've had to pass by a couple of mules, and because I'm trying to remember which trail we went up and down. I think it was a Bright Angel Trail we went back up as well. I think it's been so long. That was like 40 years ago, man. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I still remember that going down and up and with no preparations at all. I just figured, go down, it wouldn't be that hard. You learn stuff, and thank God he protected me despite that. But so Linda, she had a little hypothermia, but she got over it, so that's good. So anyway, when she was down there, Doug, at the bottom, you had wanted her to take some pictures of some stuff, right?
Right, and she actually the background that I've got behind us is of the Vishnu Schist. Now, the thing that she thought was remarkable about this was that the strata are actually vertical, and they're standing straight up. And so the question has to be, well, how did it get in this particular formation like this? Did the strata lay down like this and
then tip,
like that, and then tip vertically like that? And there's really not a good explanation for that from a evolutionary standpoint, but these are metamorphic rocks. They're not sedimentary, and they're actually igneous rocks turned into metamorphic. And so the vertical stuff that's going on are really cracks in the rock. They're not really the way they were laid down. I asked about this on the Creation Research Society network, and I actually had Tim Clary tell us about that. And but many creationists, him included, believe the Vishnu Schist rocks are the creation week rocks.
Well, is that right? Okay.
And so he thinks that these were what was there when the canyon was formed, before all the layers were laid down.
Before the flooding and all the layers.
And if you go down there, there's a what they call the Great Unconformity, where all these, the tops of these layers, or these tilted layers, there's actually about 4 or 5 different tilted layers that are supposedly the Precambrian rocks. And
now, Precambrian, for those who haven't looked, that's the bed. That's the basic rock.
The bedrock.
That would be creation rocks. Okay, it's before any life is on the world. And this is, of course, we're using evolutionary terms, but that would be the basic rock. Okay, so all right, go ahead, Doug.
And then you have the there's other things that you find down there. There's the Hecate shale, and there's and that's something I don't think we had a picture of from Linda's point of view, because you have to go a certain part of the canyon to find this. But there's been experiments done on the Hecate shale that they've been able to extract pollen out of it.
Is it still viable, or is it fossil?
It's a fossilized pollen, but it's of trees that are like endemic to today. They're they're available today. So the question is, is this really an indication of ancient fauna that was there at that time, or was that something part of creation? And when you look at God's creation, He made everything perfectly in the beginning, the same way. And what you have over the period of time when, from day of creation to today, you have certain flora and fauna that have become extinct. And so,
Sure, yeah.
so what we believe is that this was part of what God originally made. He made everything, and you have either degradation of the genetic genome, or you have extinction where certain traits die out, and certain species die out. And so that's what we believe happened in terms of what we find throughout the strata that go up.
Now, Linda was not able to get pictures of this, correct?
Right.
Okay, this is a difficult area to get to? Okay.
Right. There's another spot I wanted her to find for us. She had actually talked about going rim to rim and then back to the other rim.
Wow.
And that would have been quite a trek. But if she was going to do that, she would have been able to take a part of the North Kaibab Trail, which goes up to the lodge at the North Rim. And on that, on the red wall and the Cambrian, the Cambrian strata, there's a spot where they're interbedded. And so you have the Cambrian, the Mississippian, Cambrian, Mississippian, and it goes with several layers like that. And this particular spot was between those two layers, which are supposed to be 200 million years apart, according to evolutionary
theory, yeah.
And there's actually a layer in between called the Temple Butte Formation, but in this particular spot it was absent. And so you have this little spot of Devonian that's supposed to be there, but it's not always found in the in between them. So it sort of pinches out, and then you find it over here. It pinches out, and so that's
but that indicates it. That's why it sounds so much more like flood action or water action, where you have sediment coming in and out. Because what they determine in sedimentary rock, what actually is the age of the rock or the type of rock is what fossils are found in it.
That's right. You date about the fossils.
See, I was confused when I was younger. I used to think different rock strata were different kinds of rock. That's not really the issue. It's what kind of fossils are found in them is what they determine. They could be the same kind of rock that's Precambrian or let's say Mississippian to Devonian or Cretaceous and let's say Triassic or whatever. But it's what you find, what fossils you find in them. So that is based on an assumption that evolutionists and deep time advocates always put in to the geologic record. And now we see these two strata, the Precambrian and the Mississippian, right?
Right.
And they're interbedded. So you got one here, and then you got another one here. Cambrian and then Mississippian, which are separated by evolutionary deep time thinking by 200 million years or more, right? Yeah, that doesn't work at all.
And so the secular evolutionary ideas about the formation of the canyon is that they make up the story about it. That you have the shallow seas that cover this area, and they get these clam fossils down the bottom, and then you have the fish fossils coming up after that. You have the amphibians, and then you have the reptiles, the mammals, and then the man up at the top.
Birds are thrown in there.
Birds are thrown in there here and there, but what you really have is that even from the Cambrian, you have examples of most of these all throughout the geologic column.
Well, that's why they call it the Cambrian explosion, because virtually every type of group of fauna and even flora indicated in the Cambrian explosion. I don't know, are the mammals in the Cambrian explosion? I've not heard that, but I've heard about every other thing you can think of, fish to amphibians to crustaceans to everything is thrown in this life coming, basically this explosion of life out of nowhere. Okay, they still make it like what's Cambrian? I'm trying to think how many, 375 million years ago or something like that when it begins or whatever.
600, I think.
Is it 600? Yeah. 375 to 600. But anyway, this supposed all this life arises virtually spontaneously from geologic time, and you're going, huh. And yet, and it's not like you have this nice uniform or consistent where you got the simple on the bottom and more complex. That's what they want you to believe based on the evolutionary scenario. It's all jumbled up and there's all kinds of different things on that. Of course, my issue is that even the simplest life form, Doug, is so complex it's not even funny. You know, we talk about even the cell and the living cell and all that stuff. It's more complex than anybody could have imagined. But so anyway,
one thing that Linda got pictures of
what?
is the volcanic flows and where they do the radioisotope dating.
Ah,
And so this is an issue that came up many years ago when Institute for Creation Research went to these particular volcanic flows in the Grand Canyon, and there are some at the top of the canyon, some at the bottom of the canyon, and they are supposed to all have certain radioisotope dates.
right.
Well, it turned out that they used different dating methods on them, and they didn't agree. And so, but a lot of them just didn't come out right. But the volcanic flows are something that Linda took a picture of, and it's kind of interesting that you have some that actually come out. And the evolutionary ideas about how the canyon formed. There was one theory that they had called the Antecedent River theory, and that idea is that the Colorado River was flowing like that all the time as the Colorado Plateau gradually rose, and so this gully continued to get carved by this Colorado River.
And what's wrong with that theory, Doug?
Well, the Colorado River is too small.
Yeah. Well. And the thing, it is way too small to cut the canyon. You see, I still remember years ago, Doug. We talked about this. I think on last time we did a show on Grand, but it still cracks me up. Watching old Fred Flintstone cartoon, man. Years ago, it had this tiny little trickle of water. It had a sign, "Future site of the Grand Canyon."
That's right. Yeah.
Because we know the water does not cut like that unless it's really moving fast. It really has to have some force to cut in. Water tends to meander. You get alluvial plains, and it gets washed out. You don't really get canyons cut unless you have violent water action.
Well, there's another evolutionary theory that is called the precocious gully theory, and what that's talking about is that you have a small canyon, and there's a gully that forms, and at the top of that particular canyon where the gully is starting to form, this just continues to get wider and wider and wider, and then it sort of breaks through and becomes a big gully. And so it's another idea of what might have happened, but the canyon is just too big for this. It's really a indication that there was a real catastrophe that took place. Now, the catastrophic plate tectonics or continental shift ideas are creationist ideas, and that is that you have the Noah's flood, and Noah's flood is where you have continents actually subducting underneath the other, and it goes like this, and you get the mountains pushed up, and the valleys sank down. That's really what the Psalm 104:8 says. The mountains rose and the valleys sank down, and that's something that you can actually see from seismic data that this is what had taken place. And so you had some vast movement of plates on the magma of the Earth.
Now that's dealing with the actual flood event, where a lot of people believe the canyon was a post-flood thing that happened because sedimentary rock is already established, which would have been laid down during the times of the flood.
Exactly.
Correct? Yeah. So the sediment is already there, and out of the water is being squished out and things. But there's big, huge inland lakes that had remained post-flood event. Is that where we're going here, Doug?
Right. There was the breach dam theory is what that's called, where and I think Stephen Austin is one of the proponents of this, is that there were two large lakes behind where the canyon was. He called it Grand Lake and Hopi Lake. And if you look at the Little Colorado River, at the spot where Cameron is, which is more lower elevation, it's fairly flat, and canyon for the Little Colorado River, it's maybe 100 feet deeper at the most. But if you go to the Grand Canyon, where the Little Colorado River empties in the Colorado River, there's thousands of feet of cliffs where this goes through. And so the idea is that there was a breach of a dam where this was all this water was...
kind of the water was behind the wall, whatever, it had busted through, cutting a swath through the sedimentary rock. While it was still somewhat plastic, a little bit, the rock was not totally, I like to call it rockified, but the word is lithified, but it wasn't rock. It was just, some of it might have been, but still somewhat plastic, if you will, or not totally set up, but it would have been able to cut through it a lot easier. So yeah, I kind of like that theory in a lot of respects, because you and I, when we went driving through, we saw some areas that looked like they were inland lakes. They almost looked like they were.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you on that.
Don't, because they looked like they were like bottoms at one time might have been lakes.
Well, in the Painted Desert area, that's where they were talking about it being.
Yeah.
But,
well, that would be different. Yeah.
But if you look at and Michael Ord sort of has his own ideas, is that at the end of the flood. Well, the first thing is that as the flood was laying down the layers of rock, you had sort of like standing waves of deposition as the things were deposited in the flood. And I've got sort of a little video of that I'll show you here. But those standing waves deposited the rocks in sort of like crisscross layers like this. And you can see that all throughout that particular area, and you can also see it in Walnut Canyon.
Does he think that formed the entire Grand Canyon, or just that area?
Well, a lot of those areas, a lot of those layers are like that. Now, like the sandstone and the top layers, like the kaibab, they were more flat. But in some of these particular layers of rock, they have these sort of like little curved formations, and it's sort of like as if as it was laying down, it's like it was a standing wave that was causing this. Well, Michael Ord's idea is that there was, at the end of the flood, there was a sheet of water that just overwhelmed this area. And it had to do with the runoff of the water as the waters are going down. And so with a sheet of water, it would have been able to carve out the Grand Canyon. It would have formed a gully that would have just flowed right through it. And so he has a little bit different idea than there was a post-flood lake. He thought it was more of a something that happened during the flood, right at the end of the flood. So those are some of the ideas, the creationist models for the Grand Canyon and for how it might have formed. But getting back to Linda and her hike, she just took a whole bunch of incredible pictures. And part of the thing at the bottom of the canyon is that you notice how flat and wide this canyon is. There's just miles of this flat area at the bottom of the canyon, and
not where I was at, but that's okay. Yeah.
But and there was one spot where the North Kaibab Trail takes you up to, I think it's Ribbon Falls, I think it is, and is following a stream that is in Bright Angel Canyon, and this, and so it's sort of flat for quite a while until it hits the other side of the canyon, and then you go up these switchbacks up the trail to the top. And so that's kind of what the way things went with them. And so it was, they have all the, and so they did all this preparation and took some time and I think it took them 3 days to do this whole trek, 3 or 4 days to go from rim to the bottom back to the rim again. And so there's some Bible passages that deal with this. The first one is, "Speak to the earth, and it will teach you." And this is in Job. It's in Job 12, verse 8a. "And the mountains rose, the valleys sank down." To Psalm 104:8. "Do not be carried away by the error of unprincipled men." And that's in 2 Peter 3:17. And in 2 Peter it says, "In the last days mockers will come, saying, 'All continues just as it was from the beginning.' They are willingly ignorant of this, that by the word of God the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of water and by water, through which the world was at that time was destroyed, being flooded with water." Now that asks the question, why did God feel it necessary to send a flood at that particular time? Do you have a good answer?
Well, the world was full of violence and corruption. That's the statement given in Genesis itself, that basically the violence and corruption had ascended into heaven. They had lost their way. I think the corruption of man was so amazing they had become flesh. Mm-hmm. And he said that was, he wasn't going to put up with it. He was going to cleanse the earth and start over again. I've always been amazed, though, that he kept some of the animals, some of the, and obviously 8 people got on the ark, so he didn't start everything ex nihilo.
Yeah, he actually made enough room in the ark if anyone else wanted to come. They would have had room, but that's something that didn't happen. And unfortunately, we are living also in the days, it says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be when the coming of the Son of Man will be. And so we are approaching a time in our history where the world is getting so violent and wicked and apart from God that maybe it's going, when he gets an idea to come back, there's going to be a lot of people that wish they had made their decision.
He said, "When I return, will I find faith in the earth?" That's what you need to remember.
Well, we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution. Thanks for joining us.